Hi, in this video I would like to talk about class API design, focusing especially on encapsulation as one of the most important parts of good API designing. To understand why it is so important, let's take a look at the following simple service. Its main responsibility is to manage the configuration state of a particular widget component. Whenever the config signal value changes, a dedicated effect triggers HTTP call to save the config on the server so it can be fetched and restored sometime later. Currently, every property and method in this class is public, which is quite often a sign of a bad API design. But why might it be a problem? To understand that, we have to take a look at how we use it. So I inject a service into a certain component, then I access some config properties, which is fine, and at some point I decide to switch the widget layout by updating the config. This works quite well. You can see that the widget width is switched and the config was successfully sent to the server. However, this only worked because I properly updated the config signal value, but it's JavaScript. Nothing stops me from simply mutating the config like this to update the value. And obviously this will break the entire functionality because mutating the signal value doesn't propagate the change to the reactivity graph, which means that full size will not be recomputed and the effect function will not be triggered. And this is not a problem of the guy who doesn't understand how signals in Angular work. The problem is actually the API design of my service, because a good API design is supposed to prevent or at least significantly reduce a chance of wrong service or component usage. And in this video, I'm going to share with you how I personally approach the API design for my components and services, and we'll also take a look how testing fits all this story. My name is Dmytro Mrzensky and I help people to become advanced Angular developers. And in my opinion, this is one of the topics that can help you with that. So let's dive in. Designing a component or a service, I heavily utilize encapsulation and encapsulation-first approach. It means that whenever I create a new property or method in my class, I make it private by default and I expose it publicly only when it is really needed to be explicitly called by some component or other service. However, I try to expose things wisely too. I pay special attention to exposing the data sources or service state like a config signal property. In most cases, I don't expose them directly. I prefer keeping control over how my data is read and modified. And that's why I hide this manipulation behind a dedicated method that I publicly expose. So here, inside this public method, I already implement the signal update in the way I think is right for me, for my particular use case. And it might be either the set method call, or maybe I want to merge the previous state of my config with the new one, so I would use the update function. It's already up to me, but the main thing that I control this process. And doing so, I'm leaving no even the smallest chance to mess up the config update, because there is only one way to do that. What is even better is that having one and only one way to set up the config makes evolving this process much easier. For example, we can simply add a config validation layer without requiring service consumer to make changes on their side. And we can be sure that configuration updates cannot be made without bypassing the validation process. Now, what about reading values from our service data sources? Well, I expose them publicly as read-only properties using something like a computed function or the signals read-only method, which allows me to derive the current state from the original data source that remains my source of truth. And since it is my source of truth, when I change its value, when I change my config, I should do it through my private property. And in this way, I completely shield my config and have full control not only over the modifying the config, but also over reading it. And it is also a big advantage because with this additional layer, I can add functionality such as, I don't know, applying object freeze to it to make the high-level keys of my config natively read-only, which I think a good thing for things like configuration. And this prevents all possible ways to change or mutate configuration value, making the setConfig method the only legitimate way to do that. And in such a way, using the encapsulation-first approach, we could achieve really minimal API for our service without losing flexibility. At this point, very often rises a question about testing, because if most of the things in our class are private, then how can we test that? This is a great question and I'm going to address it later in this video, so continue watching. But now let's turn our attention to components and let's see if we can apply similar principles for component API design. In my components, I also apply the encapsulation-first approach, making all properties and methods as private by default. But talking about components, we should mention a concept of template, right? And in templates, private properties are not available. However, in components, I do not hurry up to promote them to public. Instead, I make them protected, which is enough in most cases. This makes method or property available in the template while it is not accessible via the component class instance. But is there any situation or use case when it would be justified to publicly expose a certain component, method, or property? Yes, for example, what if at some point you want to reload your data source? So you introduce a dedicated method, but it might be that the trigger that involves this method is located not in the template of this particular component, but it might be located somewhere outside. For example, in my case, this button could be located in the widget wrapper component, the goal of which one is to reuse a certain layout for all potential widgets in my application. And in this particular scenario, I would need to get a reference to the weather content component instance via content child or any other equivalents. And then I would need to manually trigger the reload method of that component in order to reload my data source. And this is one of the situations when you have to expose publicly a method, because otherwise, it wouldn't just work. By the way, you can go even further with this pattern and make it less coupled by another abstraction layer that would make your widget more generic. And I covered that pattern in one of my dedicated videos. If you want, you can check this out. But yeah, in general, this is one of the situations when exposing method publicly is absolutely okay. All right. Now, as I promised, let's very quickly talk about unit testing, because many developers are confused by how to test class where almost everything is private or protected. For example, let's take our service and say I want to make sure that the validate config method, which is private, works properly. And many developers tend to expose it publicly, justifying it by the fact that you need it for unit testing. In fact, you don't need to invoke their private method because it is already used by the public method. You already tested this method by testing their public set config. So if you want to make sure that the validate config method throws an error when the invalid config is provided, then provide this invalid config as an argument for the public set config method and simply expect that the error will be thrown. That's it. In components, though, things are less obvious because, for example, how can I call the switch layout method if it is protected, but I need it to test my layout switching functionality? And when we are talking about components, we have to slightly rethink what do we understand under the public API. In general, public API, this is a way how outside world or users can interact with our classes or components. And it might happen via public methods and properties, of course, but also users interact with our components via template. So we have to treat a template as a part of the components public API. So if you think about users, they never call the component methods directly. What they do instead, they trigger an event that eventually involves the method you want to test. And this is exactly what I have to do in my unit tests as well. But how do I verify the result? Well, the same way, right, there is full size property is not accessible, it is protected, but I don't even need that. I know that the state of this property dictates if a certain CSS class is attached to the component host or not. And this is exactly what I have to validate. And as you can see, I can do that even without direct access to that protected property. It happens also quite often a situation when you inject something in your class or service, for example, HTTP client, and you store it in the private property. But at some point you want to check if certain method of HTTP client has been called. In this situation, you don't have access to your HTTP client instance via the class property, but you can get access to it via Angular dependency injection. So you can inject it in your test and then simply spy on a certain method of the HTTP client and make sure that it is called at some point when it is needed. And by the way, these and many other cool techniques I cover in depth in my video course that I designed specifically for beginners in unit testing, and from there you can learn a lot about designing reliable and useful unit tests. And once you understand how to create reliable tests, and if you are actively adopting AI tools into your development process, you can delegate this boring testing work to AI agents like TestSprite. I already mentioned it some time ago, and the idea is that after a quick registration, you install their free MCP server to your favorite AI tool like Cloud Code and simply prompt to test your app with TestSprite. It will quickly scan your codebase and ask you for a product requirements document to understand what testing scenarios to create, and this is basically it. TestSprite will start testing your application, and a cool thing is that in new versions of TestSprite, you can monitor your entire test suite as it runs with live status updates, detailed test insights, and execution recordings, which is really useful. And besides that, as your application evolves, you can update existing tests to reflect changes in your application using the test sprites interactive in-place editing capabilities. So if all this looks exciting to you and you would like to play with test sprite on your own, follow a special link in the video description so you can get 1 month for free for their starter plan. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this video until the end. Please let me know in the comments if you find this video useful and helpful, or maybe it was too basic and you would like to hear something more advanced from me. I don't know, I'm always looking for your feedback and I would appreciate it so much in the comments. Also, if you have any Angular topic in mind that you are struggling with and even LLMs cannot help you to understand it, please let me know in the comments and I will consider to make a video about it. Otherwise, once again, thank you so much for watching and I wish you a productive week ahead. Stay safe and see you in the next video.